We continue here as really the entire country of Israel awaits the announcements later today about the closures to come on some 30 municipalities facing the highest rates of infection of COVID-19 here. But the specter is looming large over the ultra-Orthodox communities and the Arab communities where the numbers haven't been good in some. And Professor GAMZU, the country's coronavirus czar, has specifically been focused on those communities. We're joined now by Rami Sayegh, political analyst in Jaffa here today to get some perspective on perhaps how his messages are being taken in the Arab communities of Israel here now. We've seen some clear signs here by all accounts that within the ultra-Orthodox community he's become somewhat of a persona non grata here. A letter delivered to the Prime Minister decrying his decisions here now. And GAMZU at the beginning claimed his most important issue was reestablishing public trust. Where does that stand in the Arab communities right now? What's their perception of him?
If you're talking about the Arabic community, recently the Arabic community are having much more testing than the Hebrew community. That's why you can see now the high level of the coronavirus inside the Arabic community. They are much more affected because it's naturally they are doing their own tests, and that's why we see the high amount of the people who are infected. For example, in Tel Aviv city, only in Tel Aviv city, they didn't do at least 30 or 40%. I don't know the percentage, but they didn't do the same thing that the Arabs did on their areas. So that's why you can see the gap between the Arabic community and the other communities, or the Israeli Jewish community.
There's certainly been a lot of inter-community denial. In other words, that it's not with me, it's with someone else. This has been the nature of the virus really spreading around the country. At this point, by all measure, it's everywhere in the country. But this critical lack of faith in the leadership, it appears. Wondering if Professor GAMZU's directives will be followed in Arab communities. We know so far that there's really, as you mentioned, there's been intense effort within those communities to stop the virus. Will they listen to GAMZU?
Today, just read what GAMZU said, and he was less extreme than before, and he said that this is the responsibility of every one of us, not only the people of the Arabic or the Hebrew community. I'm against accusing anyone. This is what he said, and I'm agreeing with him, because we cannot always attack the Haredim or the Arabs because they are like populations, special populations. We are not also taking responsibilities or leaving responsibilities. The Arabic communities or the Arabic communities should and must make extra effort, especially those who are like the red zones now, and they don't have to ignore the numbers and that we are talking about. And I think that it's like a common responsibility between the municipalities, the Arabic municipalities, and the State of Israel and the Ministry of Health. This is the best solution for now, because the Arabs are doing the same like the Jewish, and they are acting the same. But the one thing that separates them is that they are living in small communities or like packed communities. That's why they are maybe infecting each other. And they're talking about also the massive occasions or the weddings that we're talking about, though they are doing it on open space, but still they are not responsible for their own acts. My opinion is to make sure that if you have the next week just an occasion, you have to be much more clear with the audience, and you have to be strict with the audience. And also you can make ideal or new ideas for the people who want to celebrate with you. Maybe they can just celebrate with you just the small family and not the whole village or the city.
Do you have a sense that localized lockdowns, as GAMZU's been pushing to focus in on communities, that will work at this point? When we talk about just looking at the Arab communities in the country, would a focused lockdown be effective? I mean, after all, a lot of the red zone communities, so to say, will receive additional resources. It's not just about restrictions. They're trying to provide resources to tackle the outbreak now. Would it be a helpful step or not helpful?
My opinion is that they have to be a little bit strict, because when we saw in March the restriction that was all over the country, it helped a little bit, but still we didn't have the tests back then. Nowadays, the Arabs have much more percentage, as I said at the beginning. They had a lot of percentage than the Hebrew communities, and now they're having their own tests, they're having their own numbers. I think the extra effort is have to be like closing for a few days the red zones, and it doesn't matter if it's Arabic or Hebrew communities, because I hope that it's maybe good news or positive news that, for example, in Jordan they had like a strict law that gave them just permission to go just for emergency to leave the house, and for 14 days they didn't leave they had their houses. And now Jordan are facing the coronavirus much more better than Israel and other countries.
Well, I guess Israel went through an exercise similar to that back in April as well. We're waiting to see if that's the order later today for all of us once again here. Rami Sayegh and Jaffa, thanks for being with us.